Hey everyone, and welcome to Ink Spotlights from Comix Wellspring. This is the series where we shine the spotlight on immensely talented creators who print with us. And today we're joined by Tanner Geesey to talk about some of his projects, his art, and a little bit more. Tanner, thank you for your time today. My cat is jumping in to say hi as well. Why don't you tell us all about what you do in your book? I'm super hyped about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I am a new comic book writer. It's always been a dream of mine since I was a kid. Um, as when I was little, I used to draw a lot, and I would always draw these comic books. My dad would take printer paper and he would like fold them together, give them the staple down the middle, and I would draw maybe 2 or 3 pages worth of pictures, and I'd try to sell the whole thing for $10 at the time. So I was really into comic creation as a kid, and over time, I'd always wanted to be like a creative storyteller. And most of my art career in high school was mainly about making characters and creating stories around them. Um, Unfortunately, after high school, when I joined the real world, I kind of let everything bog me down, and I lost that creative spark. And then a couple years later, I rediscovered it, and before I knew it, I am back, and Number Two Pencil Man was born, and so this is the first comic I've actually written.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I did not illustrate this. I have a talented artist named Frey. He does all the art for me, but I have a storyline that I am writing, and this is just the first of hopefully many to come out.
Dude, that's awesome. We just talked to Frey a few days ago as well, and he's such a cool dude. The
Oh yeah,
guy's so talented and has so many other projects as well. Like you really found a great artist to collaborate with. And I think, especially as a writer myself, I'm someone who doesn't draw. That's what we have the show Spilled Ink for, so I can learn how to draw.
hmm
But it's one of those things like a writer, you kind of get stuck because you want to make comics, you got to figure out this angle, and then you have to partner with someone that can help bring your vision to life in a collaborative way, but
oh yeah,
also have like the right art and skill set for that too. That has to speak right for everything. And that could be
absolutely.
really difficult and honestly sometimes discouraging at the beginning of our journeys. How did
Oh
you
yeah.
come across Frey and how did you guys start to collaborate together?
So right around the time I rediscovered my creative passion, I would go to Comic Con. So I started with a YouTube channel. I'll backtrack a little bit. I'll give you the origin
Yeah.
story for Number Two Pencil Man. So when I started my YouTube channel, I told the story about when I sat on a pencil. And when I did that, I decided, well, I'm going to add some pizzazz to it. I went and bought a pencil costume and was like, hold on a second, superhero origin story. So I bought the mask, bought the cape, and I filmed the video. And then I started going to comic conventions dressed as Number Two Pencil Man. And at a local convention at a mall very close to my house, Frey was vending. And I just remember the first time interacting with him, like we talked about his art because I really like his cartoony style. He has like, I've always been a big fan of cartoons. Cartoons is kind of one of the inspirations for creative storytelling in my life. I used to watch
Yeah.
all the Cartoon Network shows back in the
Oh
day,
yeah.
really big into it. So when I saw his style, I'm just like, this is really cool. And I looked at his original manga series, Enlock, and was flipping through that. I didn't buy it that time, but him and I had a good connection, good conversation, and we just kind of left being friends. And I'd say over the course of about a year and a half, him and I would bump into each other at other conventions. I'd actually buy his books finally, and it led into a good friendship where he was just a really cool guy to hang out with. And then we got to talking about art, and I was like, I want to create this as a comic book now. So he was like, let's do it. He was willing to do the art for me. He gave me an amazing deal, which is one of the only reasons I could do it. And we worked together, and yeah, like his art style, as you can kind of see here, it's that fun cartoon vibe. We'll open this up a little bit here, but
Oh,
he
that's
just
so great.
he's really good with like expressions. And yes, I did put the origin story in the comic book, so I did. It's part of the story. It's canon, but yeah, like without him, I wouldn't have this right now. He took a chance on me and was willing to work with me, and yeah, it's so important. Like if you can't do the art, which I wanted to do the art originally for the comic book, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, right now, I have a very physical job where my hands are very much involved, so I kinda started
Oh,
developing carpal tunnel. So anytime I hold a pencil or anything for too long, it goes numb. My hands go numb, and so I don't draw as much as I want to anymore. I'm trying to get back to it, slowly but surely. I'm starting with other things, and comic book styles aren't actually what I specialize in. So it worked out that I found somebody who actually had the art style and was able to do consistent, like you have to draw the same characters over and over again. You gotta have to be good at that kind of stuff. Me, I'm not the best with that either. So it worked out. Finding an artist was probably the best move for this, but I do have other projects that I'm working on where I'm actually the illustrator on them. So
Oh, cool. Dude, that's so interesting and fascinating too. Also, it gives me kind of like Captain Underpants vibes, and that's something I grew up with. And I was like, this is already a really rad sounding book and whatnot. And it's kind of interesting hearing that, like how it's a struggle for you to like use like a pencil because of like the carpal tunnel and whatnot. And your book is number two
yeah,
pencil man. Like, and it's just such an interesting like way to think about that. It's like one of your weaknesses is your greatest strength. You know what I mean? Like
I mean, literally, I sat on one too, so it's kind of like a
yeah.
weakness in that regard.
Yeah, it's like something you're facing head on that's like really like affected your life in a sense, you know? And it's a weird kind of
Absolutely.
odd way to think about it, but it's so true. That's fascinating to me. That's super rad. Also, what like era of like Cartoon Network were like is your Cartoon Network? I'm always curious about that because I was a Cartoon Network kid as well.
So I had the shows like Codename Kids Next Door, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Oh, there was a lot. Teen Titans,
Oh
the like
yes, yeah.
original first run of Teen Titans, which was one of my all-time favorites on that
Yeah.
channel. Oh, I'm sure there's more. I'm blanking out. Like
Oh,
Camp
that's
Lazlo,
yeah, that's
Chowder.
where I'm Chowder, dude. That was a great
I
show
love
as
Chowder.
well. Oh man. And there was the one with the pirate dude. I forgot.
Flapjack,
Flapjack. That was a great
The
one.
Marvelous Misadventure. I think it's The Marvelous.
Yes.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, stuff like that and like Samurai Jack was in my
Mhm.
era and Dexter and Ed and Eddie and
Toonami too.
Courage, Tsunami. Yeah,
Yep.
okay. So around the same era of like animation being an influence. And I think you're totally right there too, because the storytelling in those animation episodes at that time,
Mhm.
especially those Courage and Dexter and Ed and Eddie ones, you have those,
Oh, yeah.
11-minute cartoons and it's a full story. And that's a perfect like mini comic. When you think about the pacing and you observe what's going on, have a consecutive, characters and just adventures and whatnot, those are great things to study.
Yeah.
Like storytelling wise. And I find that like people who really love those cartoons or the cartoon format and went into comics, you could see that reflection within their work too.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's really inspired a lot of how I write stories. They had that also, like, witty humor that was intelligent. It wasn't just, like,
Yeah.
the stupid humor. It was, like,
Yeah.
well placed. You knew what they were going for, and you could, like, really appreciate the sentiment behind it, and that's kinda what I wanna carry on too. Like, I wanna bring back the hardest stories because now a lot of storytelling gets repetitive, and sometimes they're just creating stories just to kind of like make money, and it's
Yeah.
kind of lost the heart of the creation in it. And I want to bring
Completely.
back creations and stories with a spirit and a soul in them that people can read and generations later be like, I remember that, and that like had such a deep impact because those stories really do impact. It's like the way that we're talking about the cartoons, it's
Yeah.
so fun, and I want to capture that in what I write. So huge
And
influence.
it sounds like you're on that approach, especially with this book. And so you're going for like a younger age group with this book as well. Like, and it's one of those just like these cartoons, how they
Mhm.
could apply to like a younger group. And then also as an adult, you can read it and then be like, oh, I get even more now, oddly enough. And it's just as entertaining. And like
Yeah.
number two pencil man seems to be on that nice teetering line between it's for kids, but as an adult, you could really still enjoy it and get a kick out of it and understand maybe things a bit more than some of the kids
Oh
would
yeah.
that would be reading it. Do you write
Absolutely.
differently with like that mindset of like might be more applicable to like a children audience?
So I am really trying. Like, I love how you just phrased that because it really put words to the audience that I'm trying to get. Like, I do want to have the influence on the younger audience. I feel like helping to mold young storytelling minds and give them like that inspiration that cartoons had imparted to us. I want to share that with the younger generation, but I do want to also incorporate the older audiences. Like when I go to Comic Cons and I sell them, I get a mixed audience. Like people who are buying my books as young as 4 or 5 as like an introductory comic book for their kids. And then we have all the way up into their 60s and they're reading it and they're loving it. And that's what I wanted to capture. And so when I write, I'm also trying to figure out like what do I like now as a 27-year-old. I still like cartoons and stuff. And sometimes like anime is still one of my favorite things because the storytelling in anime can be very good in very different, like many different series and seasons. So it's like as a storyteller, I also want to write stories that I can enjoy. So I'm like, okay, what kind of things would I like to put in this? Not just for me, but even for younger people and older people. And how can I really just like bridge that? And number two pencil man, I think, is really good with that because I've been getting tons of ideas. It allows me to use all the inspiration I've ever had with like cartoons, put all that stuff that I learned from them, and just kind of mix it with what I know now. And yeah, I think that's the best way I can say that.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's really exciting for you too, especially because you're not worried about who you're trying to grasp or being like, oh, this book actually isn't, you going having a book at your table that can apply to the widest audience possible is the best way to table. You need something that's
Absolutely.
gonna like hit everybody. Cause even like some of our books with the Paulo City comics, I'm like, oh, this one's
Hmm.
gonna be great for you. And this one, I don't think your kid should read yet. You need to give it like just a few more years, like, and then like the maturity levels and understanding. And I'm just like, man, I totally lost a sale because I didn't have
Hmm.
something to offer them that was within a broader, like, demographic. And having that and just knowing that you're kind of set with that, that means you could actually include things that aren't fit for everybody because you have this one key item that does direct to a wide demographic. And like on a marketing business side of
Yeah.
comics, that's really like what you need to do to have success tabling because tabling's tough.
Hmm.
Purchasing tables is tough. And you do the costume too while
Yes.
you table as well, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm always dressed up, so whenever people are buying the comic at an event, I'm number 2 pencil man. I do my
Amazing.
whole, like, motivational spiel because I do a lot of motivational content as number 2 pencil man, so I
Yeah.
kinda bring that in how I, like, interact with people. So, I'm constantly like the superhero personality, like, "Number 2 pencil man, here to erase evil and draw on a brighter new day," and it really gets people to smile, and I feel like just having the costume is a great marketing strategy because I
Hmm.
noticed, like, even people who wouldn't necessarily be interested in just a comic book would come up to me just because I'm a giant pencil superhero, and then they look at it, and maybe I introduced a new group of people to something different, and who knows? But I think that if I was gonna do it, I want it to be committed, and that was another part of the whole thing, and that's also, like, how you were talking about having a comic book for everybody. I think that's why I started with number 2 Pencil Man as well, because I have other stories I wanna write. Now I feel like a lot of my stuff will probably be on a similar, like, audience range as number 2 Pencil Man. Like, they'll probably appeal to all ages, but I also eventually want to step up, like, and do maybe more adult things. Like, I have a novel idea that'll probably be more for adults, and that'll be, like, a little bit more rougher. I just like the lighthearted, fun comedy
Yeah.
storytelling. That's, like, my main niche, I'd say.
Yeah, and honestly, like I learned the same thing with my comics is that you need something where you could bounce into that's fun and entertaining, and then you could have like your serious books. But like having that balance and that, way to kind of move your mindset around creatively, that benefits you a lot too.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
when you get too stuck in like those darker books, you could kind of get stuck sometimes. And then like when you're just doing the fun books, you're like, well, I want to also be taken seriously and show
Yeah.
like my like skill set and my knowledge and like I want to write my Grant Morrison and my Alan Moore stories as well, but I also want to have fun. And that's
Mhm.
that's part of the thing about comics is that, in the 80s it got real dark, but before then it was all kind of lighthearted and goofy. And so you just got to kind of transition between the two and open yourself as a creator as well and challenge yourself to do both of these things because
Oh, yeah.
writing for kids and younger audiences is a challenge. And then writing like in a well crafted, like serious age range is also a challenge. And so, like, knowing how to balance those two and go back and forth, and like the word usage you can use, the way you write your sentences, the way the speech is brought about, like everything, it really does alter from age group to age group. And you have to take that in consideration. Like, kids' books are almost more difficult than like your average superhero book that you're going to write that's dark and gritty and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. It's actually funny that you mentioned kids' books. The next project that I have, and I think I mentioned briefly, like, um, I did a lot of art in high school and I created
Oh, yeah.
stories. This was actually my senior art project, so this was almost 10
Oh,
years ago now, and I wrote this and illustrated this children's book called
oh, cool.
Alex and this is just like a sample thing I put together for the senior art
Yeah.
show, but it was called Alex the Fisherman, but I'm renaming it to Alex and the Big Fish. And so I spent like all my senior art show
Oh,
or like all my
wow.
senior art year creating this children's book. All this was hand illustrated. This is just like it was put into a scanner and kind of like loosely compiled for like
That's
a
so cool,
brief
dude.
thing. So we're finally actually publishing this now after like 10 years. So
Nice. Yeah, I
so
mean,
I'm
some things are just still gold. It's good that you have something that you cherish enough to be like, you know what, I'm still gonna make this come to life no matter what. And
oh
that's
yeah, I
super
feel
important.
oh yeah, I feel like it's important to me as well as a creator because it was like the last thing I did before I lost my creative spark for that time, and it's kind of like finally coming back to that, and kind of like
Mhm.
I don't know, closing that gap in a way. It's almost like there was a wound, and now it's finally being like sutured up. Everything is kind of being made whole again for me, and I'm also going to be working on another children's book probably because I feel like what I can do right now with my current ability. I told you about my issues with my hands. What I feel like I could sit down and do is more stuff like this. Eventually, maybe I'll try my hand at a comic book later down the road if I can get all the rest of this figured out. But at least for now, I'm going to keep writing comics. I'm going to keep writing other stories. And I'm going to at least try to still have my own creative outlet where I can actually illustrate the stuff as well and kind of bring that back to life in a way.
I love it, dude. That's so exciting. I'm so hyped for your journey, what you've done and what you're doing right now and about to do. It's all very exciting and I can't wait to
Thank
follow
you.
more of it. So why don't you let us know where we could find your books, and also are you gonna be doing any cons or anything we could catch you at this year too?
Yeah. So I'm more located on the East Coast. I'm from Pennsylvania.
Cool.
You can find my comic on my website. I do have a website called www.tannerstaleentertainment.com. Sorry, my son is
No, you're
awake from his nap. Uh, but on there, I have both digital and I have limited quantity of the physical format at the moment because I am about to go to a couple conventions. I will
cool.
be at multiple conventions. I'm not fully booked yet for the year, but I do have one tomorrow actually in Maryland. It is StellarCon,
Oh,
which is a
nice.
fairly big one. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be my first time being a vendor there. I have Super Jersey Con, which is in April, and Thy Geekdom Con in May. And that's, as far as I know, all I'm booked out for currently, but events are constantly popping up. I try to keep my social medias up to date, which you can follow me at Tanner's Tales Entertainment. And I do have a page for Number Two Pencilman where I post motivational content, and you can find it at Number Two Pencilman. So it's kind of self explanatory with both the names.
I love it, dude. I love the motivational content aspect of it too. That's like really admirable, especially for that younger audience to just like deliver a good message. You know,
Mhm.
I really think that's great. Tanner, this has been an awesome spotlight. I'm so glad I got to talk to both you and your artist. We got to get you guys involved in some of the other shows sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm really hyped for everything you're doing, and dude, and it sounds like you're in my area too, so we definitely will bump into each other at a
Wait,
con
you're
as
actually
well.
in this area
I'm in
too?
like the Northern Virginia area in
Oh,
Winchester.
wow.
So yeah, so like the
Yeah.
Maryland conventions, I did Thy Geekdom Con last year as well, and
Did
that was
you?
a pretty cool place. Yeah, yeah, we had a table out there last year. It was a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, we were
Um,
there last year, but that was before the
oh,
comic book. Frey, I was helping him out with his he has a new board game that I was there helping promote. So I was
oh,
dressed
that's
up
right.
in the costume too.
That's amazing. That's
It's
so
funny.
cool.
I didn't even notice that you were there. That's cool now.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes we find creators and we're like, oh, we were both tabling, but we're both tabling. We're stuck at our tables most of the time, and we're just like,
Yeah.
we just probably just didn't walk by each other and really realize. But we'll definitely catch each other sometime
Oh
in the
yeah.
coming years at a con. But thank you, man. Thanks for stepping in the spotlight today.